All right, our last talk before the coffee break.
All right, hi everyone. I'll try to move quickly. I know you all want coffee and pastries. I'm Alex Gagliano. I'm a postdoc with the NSF-funded Institute for AI and Fundamental Interactions. And historically, I'm an observational astrophysicist, but as with many of you in the audience over the past couple of months, I have fallen headfirst into the world of large language models. So today I'm going to talk about how we might be able to enable real-time supernova analyses using these LLMs today and into the future. The image on the left, of course, is made with Midjourney. It got the supernova bottom left. It seems to prefer Mac OS, which is interesting. Okay, I want to root us into the problem that we're trying to solve with LLMs. We live in a truly gilded age for supernova discovery, and to make that reality a little more visceral, this is a plot I made of the night sky. The Milky Way is shown horizontally, and I'm going to show how many supernovae we're discovering and confirming to be such since the year 1800. If I play this movie forward, you see that, unsurprisingly, for a long time, our technology is not yet good enough to be able to find much going on. And as time goes on, our technology improves. We end up discovering that these are physically interesting systems to discover. And today we are starting to find that it turns out the sky is completely covered in these phenomena. How we study these systems, we go out with these big telescopes, we cover large swaths of the sky, and we look for small, subtle changes in brightness that could be supernovae. Of course, not all of these brightness variations will end up being supernovae, so there's some level of down selection that takes place. And today, this down selection looks like coming up with a set of around 200,000 candidates, and through automated and manual mechanisms, down selecting to a couple hundred per night that humans can vet to come up with a reasonable subset of scientifically interesting events. And it's worth reminding everybody that these are not static phenomena. These are massive explosions that are gone in a short period of time. And so the whole game is to very quickly triage what might be interesting to discover, to study with targeted follow-up observations before they fade away into obscurity. And this motivated the inception for us of the Young Supernova Experiment in 2019, or YEESY for short. In 2019, there were a lot of Kanye West fans. We purchased time on 2 telescopes in Hawaii called Pan-STARRS 1 and 2, and our whole motivation was to try and scan the night sky complementary to the ways that public surveys are doing so. So that's what you're seeing in this histogram on the right. The green and the blue histograms show us trying to fill in the gaps in the observation periods between when other surveys are scanning the night sky in the hopes of detecting more subtle variations in brightness to be able to more efficiently do this triaging of what we think is going to be interesting to study into the future. And so I mentioned we have this down selected, this kind of triaging that takes place. Monthly, there is a schedule that gets sent out of who's doing the nightly vetting on the left, and when it's your turn to nightly vet, you will have about 200 candidates through which you will have to scan through a significant amount of metadata. Some of these are ML generated, some of them are manual sentences that people type about whether the data collected is bad, maybe there's a bad pixel. There is brightness information over time, there's a picture of the supernova field, and we're supposed to consolidate all of this information for all of the events into a consolidated, informed subset that we want to follow up. And so, at least for me, that begged the question, is there a more efficient way to be able to organize and interpret nightly phenomena? This led us to what we have deemed the speakeasy. And so how the speakeasy works is we have a user that submits a query to an LLM agent that has function calling capabilities. One of its functions is another LLM agent that has been prompt engineered to be able to conduct SQL queries. And we have a backend database containing all of our supernova information. This database is called Easy Peasy. And so a SQL query is made to Easy Peasy, and the result of that query is sent up to the overarching LLM agent to be able to make a more informed response to the user. You can see that we're very inspired by at least the color scheme of ChatGPT, how this works in practice. You ask it a question like how many transients have been observed in some past period, And after a little bit of time, it's conducting the SQL query on the back end, and then it hopefully, responds to the user. And there's chat history incorporated within this system. So we are anonymizing these chats, of course, but you can ask follow-up information about your particular supernovae of interest and potentially hone in on what makes one of them interesting to study or not. Okay. A perennial problem for all LLMs is hallucinations. We are trying to reduce them as well on our end. And in particular, it's important for our SQL agent because we need to ensure syntactically correct structured output every time. This is a problem. We've done prompt engineering, but it's time consuming. And it's also a little bit frustrating that I have to convince an algorithm that I wrote to be able to perform in the way that I want it to perform. And it also provides no guarantees, right? I could generate 2 pages of prompts, and there will still be failure modes in which it doesn't want to generate a SQL query structured output. And so, unsurprisingly, one of the ways that we improve on its ability to do this is through RAG. So this retrieval augmented generation, in our case, we simply add a vector database where we've embedded about 100 natural language descriptions of SQL queries to the database, and then the associated syntactically correct SQL queries. And the first thing that we have the SQL agent do is use the database to find the most similar queries to better understand the types of tables in the database. There are about 50 that it needs to be able to query to respond to the user. And we found that when we embed this, then all of a sudden the agent is able to construct much more sophisticated SQL queries, in some cases joining 5 or more tables to be able to respond to the user in a single query. In this case, give me the names and coordinates of all supernovae of a particular class that have been observed within a certain time window and within a certain declination range. And of course, it's doing the querying on the back end, and after some time, it generates the result. In this case, there are 2 supernovae. And then it's able to do the follow-up questioning after that. Now, the question that we want to ask is, of course, it's one thing to be able to efficiently retrieve data from the database, but the fact that we're not looking at all of the data ourselves might mean that we're missing things. And if we're trying to discover interesting phenomena and separate the most interesting from kind of the mundane, then we need to find a way to better contextualize or add some domain expertise to all of this information that we're embedding within our LLM. So this is where I really think we're going next. We are working on creating a massive embedding space that we can use through RAG for this LLM. And we're hoping to use a contrastive loss to be able to jointly embed many different modalities that all represent one single instance. In this case, all of the information that you would look at when you're trying to do this subsetting yourself. And so, for example, you might have a picture of where the explosion took place. You might have information about the brightness over time. We're trying to generate text-based descriptions to find out what people talk about when they talk about interesting supernovae and non-interesting supernovae. And there will be many upcoming surveys that will generate massive amounts of complementary data sets that we can use for efficient embedding that then this LLM can use for contextualizing each of its new discoveries. Here's just an example of a contrastive loss through which you can train one of these embedding spaces and align different modalities in the embedding space to teach the embedding space, okay, these are different modalities of the same underlying instance here in a sigmoid loss function. And I should highlight, over at iFi, we are leading a hackathon early next week, Monday through Wednesday, to hack on some of these things, machine learning and astrophysics concepts in general, but we're really excited about multimodal embeddings, and so if you're interested in that and will be around early next week, then please reach out. We'd love to have you. And if you think about it, this is a lot of the domain expertise that currently people add to the data when they write papers about supernovae. A lot of the times we will look at and compare our observations to specific archetypal supernovae, in this case 2002 CX. And so being able to incorporate this interactively in an LLM would be really exciting for us. You also see that anomaly detection, being able to find supernovae in places where you don't expect them, is also a really valuable use case for us, and something that this multimodal embedding as a RAG piece will be able to give us. So in conclusions, I think that insights from this architecture that we're building now will help pave the way for the first natural language guided transient survey. Someone will be able to describe their science interests and what types of transients they're interested in exploring, and it'll use that to guide the types of interactions that they have with this database. And then when we create our embedding space, the exciting thing is that we're hoping future surveys can just add more data to this embedding to create kind of a more informed world model for this LLM to draw upon, to be able to study supernovae more effectively before they dim. And if you're interested in helping us build out this architecture, then please reach out. Thank you for your attention.
All right, we have a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, so this is Christoph Paus from MIT. I wanted to ask a question because it wasn't exactly clear. So
Sure.
You say that you want to real-time triage so that you can actually see more, get more data. Does it actually imply that this is running real-time and then also is able to tell the telescope? I mean, like, I'm not an astronomer, so I don't know. But does it tell the telescope, stay there and take more data? Or is this, so that is really...
So yeah, this is an amazing question. In terms of triaging on the telescope side, how it typically works is there are massive science agnostic surveys that get conducted that just scan large swaths of the sky. And we have time on smaller, more dedicated instruments to be able to go and follow up those things that are found with the larger surveys. So this is all informing what we do with those smaller telescopes. And you could imagine incorporating an outward-facing piece of this LLM to actually be able to schedule that follow-up. That's infrastructure we haven't built yet.
And what are then typically the timescales that you have to react? I mean, like, how fast do you need to process? And so like just to get a feeling for that.
Yeah, it's a good question. As fast as possible. The science that I do is interested in supernovae within the first 3 to 5 days. And when you submit a query to one of these dedicated telescope, there's typically a queue, there's latency because there are other observations that need to be taken. So already there are there's a couple of days of latency, maybe a day on that end as well. So our game is to do it as quickly as possible, sending these things off.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice.
Yeah, so I have kind of a broader question, and maybe this can come up in the panel again later, but something I've been thinking a lot about is in our domain, astrophysics, like we work a lot with images. Yeah. There's a lot of AI that's centered around image analysis, and large language models are sort of weird in that they're different than sort of convolutional neural nets designed for images. Something I was wondering was, could you imagine using large language models to explore the literature, say on arXiv, about an object or something, and also doing data analysis, looking at the images of that object, data from things like Gaia, and looking for things that perhaps have not been noticed in the literature and finding something in the data?
Yes, completely. I mean, one of the things that we're hoping to do with this multimodality embedding is to take advantage of vision-based embeddings of images that are already really, really effective. You can embed these all in different ways and then just push them together in this latent space. So yes, we are certainly hoping to take advantage of advancements on the computer science side, but you could also imagine an online LLM that continues to interact with the literature as well for specific events. We're hoping to do that as well.
Okay, yeah, I have a proposed project. Maybe we can talk over coffee.
Yeah, let's chat about it. Great.
So I have a very nitpicky astronomer question. So it's always interesting in these machine learning applications, what scope of information and how much pre-processing you do. So things that are sort of absent here are photo-Z estimate of host galaxy and angular scale of image. And there's a lot of stuff which in this eyeball parsing we use. And I wonder if you guys have explored, this is an ambitious question, but the sort of performance differential as a function of how much of that information you include.
Really good question. No, we have not explored it. We would like to. There have been a few different papers that have explored similar questions, and they play different games with the scales of the images and reprocessing for characteristic length scales at different distances, for example. If you don't have the redshift, that's hard. So no, we haven't explored it, but we would like to. I have more thoughts on that, but maybe we can chat about that after.
A really quick observation that I think ties several of these things together. I heard Sal Khan, the Khan Academy leader, say in a presentation that with these LLMs, the dashboard kind of interface with these systems may go away or be replaced because you have, sort of more natural ways of interfacing. And you had earlier an image of this that was sort of like, well, here's a dashboard and here's a totally different way of interacting with this. And I think Chris had suggested some of these things too. So I think that's just a question. Do you think that those sort of very visually dense, data dense dashboard things will be replaced by other kinds of interfaces?
Yeah, also a great question. I think dashboards are invaluable. Our problem is that we started with a foundation of like, here's our basic dashboard, and have continued to add to that dashboard with new things that we thought might be valuable. And now the dashboard itself is too information dense to be able to give us a concise description. Exactly. So the hope is that something like this can give you a more information dense summary of what you would normally have on a very dense dashboard. Yeah.